Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my top 5 moments from the Bethesda E3 2017 press conference, or their Bethesda Land event as they called it. Thought it was pretty cool. I like the aesthetic that they had this year. It's kind of late for me. I'm on the East Coast, so they do like, it's 10 p.m. there. It's like 1 a.m. for me now because I was a little bit behind too, so it was already starting at like midnight for me. But this was a nice one. It was much shorter than the conferences we've had so far. Theirs, I think, typically are the shortest ones. They're kind of just like, we don't have to hype it up. This is what we already have, and check it out this year. So right off the top, everything is coming out this year. That's kind of what they do, and I kind of love that from Bethesda. Everything that they've done is like when they did Fallout. It was like, hey, here's the announcement for this super crazy new game with Fallout 4, and also it's coming out in like 3 months. So they do that every year, and it's super freaking awesome. So I love that right off the top. That's not in my actual list, but I just wanted to mention that. It was like, I feel like I can't put that in any sort of place. I guess you can kind of as an honorable mention, but everything on this list, everything that they mentioned is coming out this year. Starting at number 5, we have the Creation Club. The main reason I put this at number 5 is because it's kind of like mods, but they're almost like slightly better mods. And they also mentioned that you have to use credits, so I was like, okay. It's cool because it's slightly better mods. They even mentioned like you can change actual gameplay mechanics. One of the things that showed up for Skyrim, they were kind of going through the list, and one thing that I noticed was survival mode. And I was like, okay, is that survival mode like how they have for like Fallout New Vegas, which is like even bullets have weight and stuff like that. So you transfer that over to Skyrim. Every bow, every arrow has weight, that sort of thing. So I was like, oh, I feel like that might be what that is a little bit, but it could be like just a training thing, or not a training, but just like an arena mode. So there's a lot of elements to that where it's like, all right, well, what makes this better than this? Like these free mods, and these have credits, which I assume you have to actually pay for, because even in that little thing, it was like, if you press X, it was like pay, like buy credits. So I was like, okay, well, it's cool, because, it's mods, and these are people that are actually, just kind of almost like freelance developers, and I thought that was kind of cool. But at the same time, it was like, well, it seems like it's just more mods that maybe they are almost holding off to make free mods. They're keeping them away from kind of the free mod space to make them, pay to get mods. And I was like, I don't, that's why it's number 5. It's still people creating new things for, Fallout and Skyrim, and I'm sure other games as, things go on. But it was just like, kind of in between. It's like, I love mods, but then it's also like we already have the free mods, and this seems like extra mods, but you have to pay for these mods. So until I get some more information, that's kind of why it's kind of right there on my number 5. It's still cool because, like I said, it's people making more stuff for games that I already like. So that's always really cool. And it's just, people who are already fans of these games being able to make something for the community, around them, that, other fans. So I thought it was pretty cool. But like I said, just the kind of lack of information and the fact that it seems like it's basically just more mods that we're going to be paying for, it's at number 5. But it's still mods, so it's like I feel like it had to be in there somewhere. Number 4 is actually VR. It's both games. It's both Doom, VFR. The F is not for freaking, for anyone who may not know that. And then, of course, Fallout VR, both coming out at the end of this year. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm very curious to see how it plays out exactly, because those are 2 very different games. You have Fallout, which is, much like Skyrim, that's just do whatever you want. That is like a ridiculously large map. There are multiple maps now, including the DLC. There are different places you can go to. So it's like, that's a huge thing to do. And then Doom, fairly linear. You have, fairly big levels. There, I've seen some couple of levels of the game. And it's like, yeah, there's quite a bit to go through, but ultimately it's like, yeah, you go from here to here in this level. It's a big level, but it's still A to B. And then you go to the next level, and then it's A to B again, and a bunch of enemies to kill. So like, alright, I'm curious to see how things might change up, because it's not like with Fallout, where it's like, oh, I go through and I make my house, and the menus come up differently, where it's like, oh, the wheel for lights and, electronics and things like that is on your left hand, and then you can place things with the right hand and a trigger. It's very different. Doom is just, you jump around. They have like the little, it's basically a teleport, and I like the way they did it. It seemed like they used the mechanic that a lot of people use in VR games, where you look where you want to go to teleport, and it seemed like they kind of added an element to that where it kind of goes into slow motion a little bit to give you time to look around, but it also, at least in one of the scenes, it seemed like he had almost like a grappling hook shootout, so it's like, okay, it's not just poof, you instantaneously teleport, because that's always a little jarring when I see that, and they kind of added into the mechanics, like you actually move to that location, using like a zip line or something. I was like, oh, that's a good idea, because it's not just, that's where I want to go, and then the screen goes black for half a second, and then it's like, and now that's where I am. So I like that idea. And other than that, it was pretty simple. It was both the games, you know, they get the mechanics of being able to see the hands and stuff like that. And the Doom VFR actually seemed very different from the main game. It seemed like what we got to see was, you get to pick certain elements. It doesn't seem like it's just Doom. Like Fallout seems like it's Fallout, and you just play that in VR. And Doom seemed like it was a completely different game. It was stuff that I hadn't seen, at least having seen maybe the first couple hours of that game through like Let's Plays and stuff. It was like picking out armor. At least it seemed like it was picking out armor. Maybe they just changed certain parts of the game to look a different way for VR. But it seemed like you actually pick armor and you pick items and stuff. And it seemed more like an arcade sort of thing than it was actually the game Doom done in VR. So it seems like that's actually a totally different experience from what I saw, at least what I'm gathering from the trailer and what I know from the actual game that came out. And then Fallout 4 is literally just, you know, it's Fallout 4. But in VR, you get to see things differently and stuff like that. So those are my number 4. I thought, you know, I like VR. I like Fallout. I thought Doom was pretty awesome. And I just think those actually, they actually entertained me. I was surprised how much I actually cared, because we knew that they were going to come out anyway. But seeing them in action, I was like, I actually kind of like that. I think that's still a cool idea. They don't go super crazy with it. They do the hand thing where it kind of, you know, it cuts off like right here. I always think that's weird, but they didn't try to go crazy with it where they do the whole arm motion, because that does end up being a lot, especially with the fact that it's, you know, motion controlled. You do all sorts of motions. They have to have like a million different designs for that with the arm. So I get why they kind of strayed away from that. It's like, let's just cut it off here. You just got, you know, you just got the hands. But it seems like it's going to be interesting. So like I said, it caught my attention more than I expected it to. So that's why I put that at number 4. Number 3 for me also caught me by surprise. I didn't think I would even give a crap. It was Wolfenstein. That looked awesome to me. Like, I don't even play the Wolfenstein games, but it was like a blend of Fallout, because of course the timing of it, it's technically in the 70s and not in like the 50s, or like the 50s style they do for Fallout. But it just looks so cool, and plus they're taking it to the States, and that makes it different to me. It was like, okay, it went from you're fighting against the Nazis like in Germany, even though they're winning, to now it's actually in the States, and it seems like it's actually in towns and stuff like that. It's not just, this is where soldiers are and you go in to fight them, so everything looks like a battlefield. It was like, nope, this is a hometown. They have this segment where the guy's, you know, he's getting like a shake, or he's getting like a drink, and this Nazi comes in, and this woman like takes her kid out because it's a Nazi, and he comes to get a milkshake, and it's like, this is interesting. This isn't something that they've had in the previous games, because it's always, it's like a war game. It's just, you know, that different style. So I thought that was really cool. It gave me like some flashbacks to the Resistance franchise, which I really wish Insomniac would make some more of those, because I want them to complete that. But it made me think of that, where like it's back in the States, and it's the bad guys. They have technically won, so you get this old style, and it's in the 70s. I thought it was in the 50s, so I don't know, maybe it is in the 50s. There's just like some stuff seemed like it was 70s based, so it probably is actually in the 50s still. It makes sense because it's, you know, it's Nazis. So it was really cool. I like the aesthetic of it. The trailer itself was pretty awesome. I like the style that they use, where it starts off with like these silly commercials and stuff, and like the fake movie with the girl and the robot dog. So I love the way it starts off, and then we go to like a monkey that has like a cat head on it, like weird experiments that the Nazis have been doing. And it was just really cool, and I was like, I love the way that they did the trailer, and it's definitely set in the 50s, now I think about it. The song that they played, it was the 50s. But it was just awesome. I was like, man, I didn't think that this would matter to me at all. But the trailer was great. I like the characters, like the one that had the grenade, and the dude who freaked out. He's like, let me first off explain I'm not a Nazi. And the dude was like, what'd you say, you're a Nazi? And he was about to like blow that guy's brains out. So it was like, they had a funny trailer, but it was also really cool. And you just see it was just like a bunch of fast clips going. It was a very like movie blockbuster type trailer. It's like, here's dual wielding and laser guns and Gatling guns and riding on a, you know, robotic dog burning people in the streets. So it was just a lot of like action set piece moments, but it looked really good. So it really caught my attention. I was very, very surprised by that, but I still enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, that was definitely awesome. So I don't know, I might pick it up. I might do some stuff where I get the old games for cheap and then kind of catch up that way. But it really had me interested, just because I've always liked that aesthetic of, you know, the 50s, where it's like an altered 50s. For some reason, it always works. It's always like, with Resistance, it was the same thing. I think it was Nazis, but instead of the Nazis taking over, aliens came in and kind of ruined all that crap, and it was like, oh, this is really bad for us. So, I always liked that aesthetic, so it got me really interested. Moving on to number 2, it was actually the Dishonored 2 DLC. I thought that was great. I haven't played Dishonored 2, but I love the first one. And the main reason this caught my attention is because I like the story of Dishonored, and the DLC not only does it introduce a brand new character, or at least a new playable character, but it introduces the concept of killing the outsider, which for people who don't know is like this, I guess he's omnipotent. Because it's really confusing. It's hard to tell. I haven't played the sequel, so I don't know what extra answers they give out. But I was like, that interests me. Like, I love that idea, because in the first game, it's just like this crazy, mysterious character who is like, hey, I'm bestowing upon you superpowers. And that's it. Like, that is it. So it's a huge mystery who this character is. And this kind of seemed to give some clues as to how he was involved in the second game. So I don't really know. But the fact that characters are trying to go after him and kill him is a very big deal to me. Because like I said, I love the first game and I love the story. Like I said, haven't had the chance to actually get the second one. But that had me excited. And I was like, man, this really makes me want to pick up the second game even faster. Because I want to know how he's involved in the sequel so that I can just hurry up and get to this DLC where characters are trying to kill this guy who, considering he gives people powers, I can only imagine how difficult he would be to kill. So, that's definitely a personal opinion in my case because I love that game. And, they always have like, you can be good or you can be bad. The sequel has 2 characters, so I can imagine, you can be good or bad with both those characters. So there's just a lot to it, and now they have this DLC coming out. And it's just very interesting. I'm like, wow, I can't wait to see what that has because I already love the first game. And I haven't even, like I said, I haven't even gotten to play the second one, but that's how much I love the first one. This has me already excited, not even knowing the full story of the actual sequel. So that's why that's my number 2. It just really caught my attention. I was like, that seems like it's going to be an amazing story. It's Bethesda. They tend to do great stories, as everyone knows who's watched that conference, but that really caught me off guard. And I was like, okay, that makes me want to pick up the sequel like right now. So that really caught my attention and I love that. Before I get to my number 1, of course, I have honorable mentions. My main thing is definitely the aesthetic. As I mentioned, I love the aesthetic that they had. I like that they utilized basically everything they've always done right with Fallout. They're like, let's just go with that old school like 50s cartoon aesthetic and do Bethesda land, and they go through, and it's a very simple thing, but I really loved it. The whole conference, they had like a little hashtag at the bottom, but it was always moving, and it was like that old school animation. Very, very simple thing, but I really loved that like the whole way through. Other than that, there wasn't, anything that really caught my attention. They mentioned, Skyrim on the Switch. I knew that was happening, so it was like, okay. That was announced when the Switch came out, and it was just like, cool. It does use amiibos, so we'll see if it goes beyond Legend of Zelda, which I assume it will, and that's just a thing Nintendo always does, is like, hey, this is a popular game, or it's just a big game in general. When it goes to Nintendo, they did the same thing with Tekken, when it was like Tekken Tag Tournament 2. They always throw in that little bonus thing where it's like, if you get it for Nintendo consoles, you get some random cool little thing. So they showed off one amiibo from Breath of the Wild, and I have to assume we're going to have some other costumes in there. Of course, it mostly works with Link, of course, swords and shields and, the way they dress in Skyrim makes the most sense there, but it's also a world of dragons and magic, so I wouldn't be like, oh, that doesn't look right that they put like a Samus outfit in there, like, or changed up the colors, something like that. So I'm excited to see kind of where they go with that. I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if they have Link in there. Why not Zelda's costume, maybe some older Zelda costumes, like her new one, older stuff, like her, older costumes, like the actual dress and things like that. Same thing for Link, old school green colors. So there's a lot of ideas there. So, of course, as an honorable mention, just because of that, it had me a bit more interested. I already own the game, so I'm not going to buy it. But once again, that's the point of an honorable mention. Moving on to my number 1, it was Evil Within 2. I love horror games. I liked the first game. I never played it, but I watched, honestly, Shinji Mikami, who's the guy behind the Resident Evil franchise, which is my favorite franchise. Once his name is attached to something, it's kind of like, alright, if I'm not going to buy it, I need to at least see the whole thing. And so that's what I did on YouTube. I watched a full Let's Play. I like the story. I've seen all the DLC, so I know the full story of that first game. And this seems interesting. It seems like it's going to be even scarier, which is great because the first one, and that was the main issue I had with it, it was kind of, it was one of those games going towards what we finally got with Resident Evil 7, going back to true horror, but it was still just a bit too actiony. It was like, it was meant to be this, it's really creepy, but it's not scary, to me at least. From the stuff I saw, it was like some moments were scary, but for the most part it was like, yeah, some stealth segments that are really creepy, but other than that, it was really like an action game in a really creepy setting. Like, there was creepy aesthetics and creepy things that happened, but there were only a few parts that were like legitimately scary to me. Even just watching it, I was like, yeah, I wouldn't have really wanted to buy this game, but the sequel looks like it'll be much scarier. Granted, that's a trailer for a horror action game, so of course they'll play up the creepy horror elements, but it looked really good. They had the aesthetic of Sebastian being in the house and it's like upside down, and the character being like, it was like some crazy, it almost looked like it was just a ghostly cloak like flying at him. So that looked cool. It seems like we're also going to be going into like an actual city. Based on the first game, it might not actually be a real life city, just to say that. But the aesthetics, like a normal modern day town, so that was cool. And being inside the house, the story of him looking for his daughter, who is apparently alive. They actually do bring back the other character from the first game as well, the female character. So I'm excited for what they're going to do with that. They mentioned that it had been 3 years since the first game, so a nice little 3-year gap. They can do some mechanics with flashbacks and things like that, which work perfectly for the story that they built up with the first game. But I'm excited for it. It seems like it's going to be much creepier. Comes out Friday the 13th, so that's a perfect time. Have some other random notes. Yeah, it's pretty much everything I mentioned. Sebastian's looking for his daughter, the city landscape, the house. And I just think in general it was a very good trailer, and that's why it's my number one. And I love horror. It's my favorite franchise, or my favorite genre, so that coming out and seeming like it's building up on the horror aspects, because there were definitely some really creepy things, but like I said, it wasn't like scary to me. There was like some scary moments, but for the most part it was like, oh, that's really gory, and that was pretty much it. Or it's like, that element is creepy, but it doesn't get to the scary part because nothing's going to happen, but it's still creepy just the way it's delivered or just the way something might look. So this seems like it's going to be like, nope, we're going to have all the stuff that was good, plus we're going to really dive into the horror. Now, I don't know if Shinji Mikami's attached to this one. I would hope so, because that was kind of like his love letter. Like, the first one was kind of like his love letter going back to, his roots with like Resident Evil and stuff. So I would love to see him on this, and I would love to see it go back into, or go further into the horror while keeping some of the action-oriented elements, because I think they did a good job with that. It was just still not, the elements that didn't revolve around the action just weren't creepy enough for me. So hoping it dives into the horror a little bit more. But that was my number one. Love horror. I think, a bit of a bias because, like I said, it's my favorite genre, but I did like the first game enough just from what I saw. Like, I'm at least interested in just knowing this story. So that in itself, and based on the trailer at least, and of course the trailer, but based on the trailer itself, it does seem like it's going to dive much further into the horror elements that I personally felt were missing, like just a little bit. Like, it just pushed like a little bit further, and it would have been great in some of those moments where it was like, it's right on the cusp of being like perfect horror, at least in this moment. And I feel like they're going to do that a little bit from, or hopefully enough, based on this trailer. But those are my top moments from the Bethesda conference. Of course, we'd love to know what your top moments were. How you guys would rearrange my list. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Favorite parts about this conference, least favorite parts about it. What was missing that you really wanted to see. I know, I'm pretty sure at least, a lot of people were wondering what they were going to do with this new IP, because there was something that, I think it was called like Starfinder or something like that was trademarked. And I think a lot of people were expecting that to come up, but it was like, nope, only stuff that's already come out that's getting DLC, or brand new games that are coming out, by the end of the year. So that's really like the only thing. I didn't even know about that until like I was watching like a pre-show, and they're like, oh, what's this new IP that might come up? So just because it was mentioned once, I was like, oh, I would love to see a new IP. And then it's like, oh, sadly, that's not the case. But we did get some good sequels. Got some good trailers for those sequels as well. Got some interesting remakes with the VR versions of Doom and Fallout. We got some, a little bit of stuff for Quake. Really no interest in that, personally speaking. That's just not my type of game. But it was a really good conference. Very excited for what we get next year. With what they have, with the way that they work with things. Like, so far their conferences are always, this is what we have, and it's coming out this year as well. I think we'll get to see that new IP. It'll probably get announced, you know, odds are before E3 next year, but we'll probably get to see them do like a full announcement a year from now, and it'll be like, this is what, you know, the game Starfinder is about, and surprise, surprise, it comes out in like October or November of next year. But I think they had a good conference. Like I said, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. Favorite moments, how you guys would rearrange my list, what made yours. There were only like 2 or 3 other things you could possibly add anyway. It was very succinct. It was like, here's what we got, and we're out. I was very surprised when it got to the end. I was like, I felt like that was too fast, but it was still really good. It was just like, this is it, this is good, and we're done. So I think they did a great job, but like I said, want to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.